Today we've got a brand spanking new, fresh from the box, like haven't even installed pedals yet, Canyon Endurace CF SLX. This is a pretty nice bike, comes equipped with Shimano Dura Ace, so the price is right up there. And out of the box, custom brought it in because it has some really clear, obvious faults that you probably wouldn't recognise unless you were a bit of a bike nerd. First one though is pretty obvious, and the back wheel wobbles really bad. We'll get some close-ups of this. The gears don't shift quite properly. They sort of grind in the bottom gears and they rub on the front mech as well. More on that in a second. And the other obvious fault is this brake has not been bled at all. It's completely useless. A couple of little build quality issues is that the cables have been left so long that this is just going to rattle whenever you go over a bit of a road, which will irritate you if you have just spent this much money on a bike. Now, the reason that these things exist is one, that this rotor crankset, which is a bit of a nice upgrade, hasn't been installed properly. And if I put my hands behind like this, you can see that I can move the entire thing forwards and backwards. Now, there is actually a lock ring on this side and it has been screwed all the way in, so I suspect that there is a spacer missing. There's also, as I spin the cranks, the outer one has got a slight bend in it, meaning that it's not quite running true. So we don't know whether the front mech has been set when it's in this position or in that position, but either way, something's definitely not right there. Before I get onto the wheel wobbling, let's get some close-ups of this extreme wobble. That'll be absolutely terrifying when you're riding that. There's another little issue with the brake. Let's just pop this wheel out. And if you can see here, you can see the thread exposed of the bolt. Now we shouldn't see that. This should be flush with the edge of this brake adapter here. And we can see what's happened if we look underneath, because the mechanic that built it has installed the spacer on this bolt, but the spacer on this one has fell on the floor and they just haven't bothered to pick it back up again. Bit of a problem. Now, the other problem is you can just see that this little safety pin hasn't been installed properly. So onto this rear wheel issue, and I think this issue is because this axle is wrong. Because when we thread this axle through and just do this up, so the gap here is 142 millimeters. You can see in here that this hasn't actually engaged all the way. There's only a few threads engaged, and there's a little indentation in the axle here, and you can see where the grease is. The hubs haven't been running on the axle properly. It's actually running on this taper, which is causing that. So I strongly suspect that this is the wrong size axle, but let's measure it and find out. So what I've done, I've just taken some calculations, and we have an 8.5 millimeter gap here on the frame. So when we set this to the millimeter gap on this side to account for where the frame is, you can see that on this side, this axle still wobbles because it's not sat properly. If we push the axle all the way through where it should be, that is now a steady fit. So I think that Canyon have supplied the wrong axle for this particular bike. So with all this in mind, if this is your bike, what you should do? Well, the first thing you should do is get straight in contact with Canyon. We're going to write up a detailed report for this customer to go back to them. And if Canyon authorise the work, we'll get on it and do it. The axle definitely needs replacing. Everything here is fixable by a bike shop, but at a cost which you probably haven't anticipated when you brought your new bike, which should be ready to ride out of the box. So feel free to get your bike shop to come over and check it. We'll charge a pretty small fee for doing this. And as you can see, it's normally well worthwhile to get it fixed before you've even installed a pedal and turned a pedal stroke. Okay, I hope that video was useful. If it was, give us a thumbs up and put your comments in the boxes below. And yeah, think about subscribing to the channel. Thanks.